Welcome, everybody. I am really excited to have you here. I'm excited for this afternoon's chat with Dan. As always, I'm going to start the session today with a reading from my book, which is called Reinvent Your Life. What are you waiting for? If you don't know, the foreword was actually written by Quincy Jones, which is quite a treat for me, given not only the work that I've done with him, but his words and the what he lives by, his motto and who he is just speaks volumes to all things that I talk about in this book and just really living life to its fullest. And when Dan and I reconnected recently, and he was sharing with me what he's been up to, it just felt like such a wonderful opportunity to share his story. I just sort of, to give you context and to those who are listening, I love to share people's stories about reinvention. My book is full of 30 stories and 26 actionable power tools that give people an opportunity to get inspired, to see how other people do things. And I'm excited to share that I'm also going to be launching a podcast, and that's going to be coming out in about 6 to 8 weeks. So some of the interviews that we do in our chat session, if we can edit them accordingly, we're also going to repurpose in our podcast. And going forward, I'm going to have a podcast to share with the universe as well around reinvention. So I'm super excited about that. Yes. And also exploring some other things and other extensions to what we've been doing around all things inspiration, motivation, and reinvention. So I will start today's session with a reading from chapter 16 under the heading of Serial Reinventions. There is a quote at the top of this chapter: the straight line, a respectable optical illusion which ruins many a man, by Victor Hugo from Les Miserables. Sometimes one reinvention just isn't enough to fulfill us. We realize we aren't meant for living life in a straight line. Like rolling stones, our hearts are alight with the thought of constant movement and change. For these souls, I have coined the phrase serial reinventors. Some of my favorite friends and well-known celebrities are just these types of Renaissance men and women. They're people who didn't settle for being just one thing: a singer, an Olympian, an actor, a model, a director, a lawyer, an agent, a mom. They didn't settle for just one style or image. They have too much life and inspiration within them to limit it to one single direction. They experienced success in one arena and felt the need to move on. For me, the most inspiring thing about serial reinventing is that it provides hope to all of us that change in and of itself is okay. It's okay to change our minds and reverse our outlooks. It's okay to make the wrong decision, meaning a decision that is no longer right in this moment. We will survive, and we can even be happy and successful while we're changing course. Of course, there are also valuable lessons to be learned from our serial reinventors. It probably goes without saying that life changes don't always go as planned. This chapter is dedicated to all of those fluttering hearts, those rolling stones, whose feet dare not stop moving. Their lessons in faith and love are treasure maps for all of us. They inspire me daily with their willingness to leap into the great unknown. And then I'll close this with a quote from Dave Grohl. I've experienced great things. I've experienced great tragedies. I've done almost everything I could possibly ever imagine doing, but I just know that there is more. So this to me feels like such a great introduction to you, Dan, as I sat back after talking to you the other day and then reading your bio. And I just thought, oh my God, there's just so many layers of what you've done and what you're doing and where you're at in your life. So I'm really excited to have you on here today, and welcome.
Thank you, Kathy.
For those who don't know Dan and those who are going to be listening to this after today's call, I'm going to share a little bit of your background because it really starts to illustrate the story. And then I've got some great questions for you, and then we'll open it up at the end for Q&A. And if anybody wants to put a question or thoughts in the chat session, feel free to click on the chat little tab icon at the bottom and you can write things in there. We'll also have information about what Dan's up to from his URL, his website, that'll be there, and information on my book and where that's available, and Reinvention Exchange contact info as well. a little on you, Dan, if I may. I took the poetic license and edited it a little bit, but there was just too much good stuff in here to share. From jumping out a perfectly good aircraft as a U.S. Army airborne paratrooper in Germany to diving more than 300 feet as a deep water scuba instructor in the Caribbean, Dan Beeman has shown remarkable range in his life pursuits. At the tender age of 50, he went back to graduate school and earned his Master's of Hospitality from UNLV, where he studied tourism with a specialization in sustainable tourism. He wrote his final research paper on the implications of pickleball for the hospitality industry. The conclusions of the research: resorts and clubs that have either tennis or basketball courts and they do not add pickleball are not maximizing their potential revenue or their asset value. They're also losing market share, group travel, and growth opportunities. So Beeman seized upon this knowledge and his background in driving new revenue through creative sponsorships, partnerships, and events by launching his consulting practice to help his clients succeed. He has also recently written a screenplay for a buddy comedy about two former tennis champions who met in a historic, infamous singles finals at the French Open in 1980. He recently published a book called Deep Dive, right there over his shoulder, Essential Essays for Personal Transformation. It challenges readers to consider relevant issues to understand themselves better. And I know a lot about that one. Widely recognized as an expert in marketing, sponsorship, branded partnerships, and specialty income, he founded and leads the largest internet-based networking group of 19,000 plus of sponsorship, media, and marketing executives in the world on LinkedIn. He's helped property rights holders in valuing their assets, aggregate them, identify appropriate brand partners, and maximize revenue. Some of the partnerships he's developed include Wells Fargo, DirecTV, Infinity, American Express, Singapore Airlines, T-Mobile, Comcast, the National Guard, and Warner Brothers. Prior to founding Beeman Consulting and Sponsorship Insights Group, Beeman was Executive Director of Partnership Marketing for Caruso Affiliated, which is where we met, Vice President of New Biz Dev, Partnership Marketing for the Mills Corporation, which is surprising that we didn't meet there because it also was a client, and VP of Strategic Alliances for the California Partnership Marketing Group and Director of Sales for Pier 39 Market Development, in addition to his years as a scuba instructor and paratrooper. He's based in Palm Springs. He enjoys playing pickleball, managing a team of head pen sponsored players in California and Hawaii, traveling and evangelizing pickleball as an International Pickleball Federation ambassador in Mexico and the Caribbean.
Hey.
So we're gonna have to talk a little bit about that pickleball. So wow, so much to unpack here. I don't even know where to start, but let's go for it. I just want to kind of point to the fact that Dan and I actually, with all these similar backgrounds around partnerships and marketing, so much overlap with the Mills Corp and Pier 39 and CPMG and all the mutual friends we have in common. But we really connected the most when you were at Caruso. And we were talking about some kind of a partnership deal with either my client or something we were trying to do together, and then just really stayed connected in our lives. And so when you reached out to me recently and we reconnected and I got to hear what you're doing with your book and all these other parts of your life, I just thought, you know, this is exciting. So I'm really glad that we're here today to have this conversation. And I got some questions for you. Surprise, surprise. So I'm going to start with this. What was the drastic pivot from sponsorship to author, and how much does the former part of your career and what you were doing still play in your current life as an author, screenplay writer, and all these other ventures that you're involved in? Was there a catalyst moment where you just felt like it is time for me, you know, what I call these aha moments? I have chapters and references to them throughout my book. But what was that kind of aha moment to make such a dramatic pivot? And I think so many listeners, so many people that tune in to these conversations have this little itch to kind of make a sharp left turn or take on that next chapter. So I'd love to kind of hear what that kind of aha moment was for you, Dan.
Well, thanks. It's a great honor to be here first with you. I'm going to get to that answer in a minute. I think there's a series of pivots that we make, and between every stimulus, there's a response, and how we navigate that gap between the stimulus and the response is really who we are as people. It's the actions we take based on what happens to us. And so there's a lot of those that happen throughout our lives that inspire us to be the people that we are every day. But first, thank you for having me. What a great honor and privilege it is to be here with you. I went through a couple of the videos and watched some previous chats, and to be amongst people that have inspired me is a great honor. Diana Nyad, wow.
I know,
right? I didn't get the chance to see that, but I've followed her, and talk about a person that's reinvented herself and has never met an obstacle she didn't think she could overcome.
So true.
She's been a great inspiration to me, as well as Leonard Armato. I had a chance to work with Leonard, and to watch the video of him today. I had a chance to sell sponsorships for the AVP tour, and he's always been an inspiration to me. And in a recent search for the new CEO for USA Pickleball, I strongly endorsed him at least to become a consultant to them because of what he's done with AVP and so many great places. So thank you for what you're doing, Kathi. What you do is you're creating great content, and you're creating a platform for people to tell their story about how they reinvented themselves. And if we're not reinventing ourselves every day, we're really missing out. So to answer your question,
thank you for that.
There's a lot of pivots and things. Do you mind if I go into a couple of?
I would love you to, and they're probably on my list of questions, and I'll just mark them off if you hit that point. But I may interrupt you to go a little deeper at deep dive, as not to steal the title of your book, but we may do a deeper dive on some of it. But go for it, please.
Well, first, I read some of your book, and I want to read something that really resonated to me. Very brief, just 2 sentences, I promise. The goal here is to create balance, dig deep, and tap into things that give you a sense of accomplishment, satisfaction, and stimulation. Find activities that simply make you happy while getting back in touch with your true self. Those are great words, and there's a lot of words there that are similar to what I wrote in Deep Dive. And it's about finding your passion and finding out who you are and doing that dive internally to find out what's important to you, to find out where your passions are so that you can apply those passions into becoming a productive member of society. So really great words there that you wrote, and something that I could have written in just using different language.
Right, exactly.
So the pivot points, think about this. We're always reinventing ourselves almost every day, but for me, there are a couple of kind of key points in my life. In 1982, I graduated from high school. Okay, pivot, what's next after high school? I also enlisted in the Army in 82, pivot. 84, I got out of the Army and I got into college, pivot. 89, graduated from college, looking for a job, pivot. 91, started working for Club Med, became a scuba instructor. Finished that in 95, pivot. Oh no, what am I gonna do after having the greatest job in the world as a scuba instructor at Club Med?
Where do you go from there?
95, broken neck, step back. Oh boy, what am I gonna do with a broken neck? Where do I go? What's the job? 96, started working for Pier 39 and got a chance to work under Mark. You may remember one of my inspirations, John Bosch, great human being that inspired me, and I got a chance to learn under him. 2001 and 2002, married, had kids. 2008, Kathi, this, I believe, is a connection point between you and I when we met, and then the recession right after that. And it's interesting that you said you started thinking about this in about 10 years ago. That puts us at 2009, 2010. So we're both at that same, time to reinvent, because people weren't buying sponsorships. So that's where you kicked off this reinvention. And for me, 2015, I turned 50. I had back surgery. And then I decided while laid up in bed, you know what? Life's not over. I'm 50, it's not over. I decided to go to graduate school. And that was an inspiration for me because I had these dreams that I still wanted to achieve. only a couple more. We're getting closer to 20.
It's great. I love that.
2018, living in Southern California, a fire, this great, huge Southern California fires engulfed our home. Oh boy, who are we? What are we going to do now? 2019, and the fire actually launched a script that I wrote, the movie script, and we'll talk about that. 2019, finished graduate school, and I launched the consulting business to help pickleball be promoted through resorts. 2020, okay, oops, pandemic. What are we going to do now? Reinvention. I finished the screenplay and I thought, I have this book that's in me and I want to write it. And that's when I began writing Deep Dive the book in March of 2020. And here we are today.
That's amazing. And, you know, when I set out to call you a serial reinventor and chose that from my book, I don't think I realized how many moments, and I so appreciate you sharing them, because I don't think people realize as they step into the next phase, the next thing, every part of their lives, whether it's a 5-minute reinvention or something hugely dramatic, the reinventions really do come in all shapes and sizes. And that curiosity, that adventure, that forced moment, those, you know, life-changing incidents that we have no control over there, they're all opportunities to really look at our lives and say, okay, what do I want out of this life? And I just, you know, sounds like you've had some moments that were really sort of watershed moments. They were crossroads for you, and others that just fell upon you. And it's just really kind of paints a very full picture of what reinvention can be. And for you, each of those moments, each of those pivots, I mean, God knows we're all living that kind of right now. The last 6 months has forced a lot of us to look at our life, to examine what we're doing, to examine where we're at, and, you know, make conscious decisions about what we actually want. It's been a gift to sort of have to pause for a moment. So it sounds like you've been through so many moments, and you had sort of an inner wisdom or a clarity, or maybe derived it from those moments. And, you know, then you set out to write this incredible book, which I think captures so much of that. So was there a struggle to get pen to paper for you at the time, or did it just come flowing? Or did you always know that one day you'd want to write a book? You know, what was that journey like for you? And I know that you incorporated other people. You have a lot of essays from other people that are part of that experience. So I'd love to hear kind of a bit about that.
Well, I guess going back to a young age, that my parents instilled in me a joy of learning. And that's one of the things that's been consistent throughout my life. And a couple of words that you use, curiosity and exploration and creation, when you were just talking. So that's kind of my challenge to readers is be curious, keep exploring, find out the things that you wanted to learn, take time to step back and look at your life and look at issues and think about how you feel about those issues and do that deep dive exploration. In regards to Deep Dive the book, it was really funny because it started out, I finished the movie, the script, with my cousin Sean, and we had a blast writing. We finished it in January. In March, I rented my pickle palace in Palm Desert, California, and went to Playa del Carmen in Mexico, and the coronavirus hit, and the borders were closed, and here I am in Mexico with everything shut down, in quarantine, and I thought to myself, that book I wanted to write that I know is in me, this is the perfect opportunity that I have a chance to do this exploration internally. And to be honest, I had never intended to write a book before, but I'd done some writing. I've done, you know, I'd use social media. And one of the things that I found is social media is very inadequate as a mechanism to have authentic dialogue and to express yourself, and for a lot of reasons. So I thought, I'm going to really just get to work and write a series of essays about things that I care about. And some of them were partially written through posts that I'd done, but and then just I extrapolated and grabbed more information. But then it came to me, my passion for the aquatic environment. And I thought, what a great metaphor. A deep dive is that deep dive internally to look at things that I care about and reflect on them. And then I know a little bit about existentialism as a philosophy that is about free will. It's about passion and it's about accountability. And I thought, why not use that lens of existentialism to look at these current events and these issues that we face? And so it came together in an unbelievably organic way, where I wrote probably 20 of the 26 essays in the book, and then had reached out to some friends and family to contribute on areas where I thought they either had a passion or a specific interest or knowledge base.
Right.
And then it just came together. I think 80 to 90% of the book was written in a 2-month period when I was in Mexico in March and April of this year, and then just recently published it on Amazon within the past month.
And wasn't that fun? I mean, you and I both, we've been down that road, both of us, and, learning all the nuances of independently publishing. And, it's really quite fascinating what's possible in today's marketplace, to be able to have something to say, to be able to share it, to be able to create dialogue around it, to have these conversations. I think, our ability to have a voice in no matter what the form and to be able to express it is a really wonderful thing. So Amazon clearly has given us the tools to do that in a pretty fabulous way. And yeah, I just know you and I have both been through that journey, and there's a lot, we could do a whole session on that one, right?
Yes.
So in that natural extension of your interest in writing and, how's it been? Are you enjoying the experience of having a book and getting it out there? And it's quite a process. But now you're also working on a screenplay. You want to share a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yes. In regards to the book, though, I want to answer that a little
please.
bit. It's interesting because I really wrote this book for my kids. Kids, they retain what they want to retain, and they communicate in the ways that they communicate. And, text isn't necessarily the best way to convey deeper thoughts. So this is really a gift to my kids. I don't have any other agenda in terms of, becoming a life coach or doing any speaking engagements. I really just wanted to put my thoughts down, pen to paper, or typing it up, and be able to communicate that. So I just enjoyed that process, and it organically came out of me. But in regards to the film, what a blast that was. It just, it's a story of two guys that were failures kind of in life. They had a very high as tennis champions in the 80s, and how they went through these challenges. One's an American capitalist, the other is was a Russian communist. And flash forward to when they met in this finals match, 40 years later, the Russians running a failed commune in upstate New York, and they're growing marijuana, and he can't figure out how to do it. And the capitalist American just got fired from his teaching professional job at a tennis club. He's kind of a mashup of a younger Agassi and McEnroe. And that through their need to reinvent themselves, they both owed money to different entities, one with gambling losses for the capitalist, and one didn't know what taxes were for the communist. Right. And so they meet and they get together and they travel the country competing in pickleball tournaments to try to reinvent themselves, to reclaim their glory, to pay off their debts. Wow. And so it's kind of a story, it's a funny story of, buddy comedy, but it's a story of two guys out of necessity that have to reinvent themselves. And in the end, they find happiness is the opposite of what each of them anticipated as they battle over their ideological perspectives of capitalism versus communism. So it was a blast. I got to recruit my cousin, John Cleary, a really funny guy and great writer, who his writing skills were dormant for many years besides the holiday letter to families. And so we just had a blast sharing concepts and laughing and writing together. It was really a lot of fun.
So I got a question. Who do you see playing the characters?
Oh, of course. I wrote the American capitalist is Will Ferrell. And then
got it. And the other, Sacha Baron
Sacha
Cohen.
Baron Cohen.
That was it. Like you were describing it, I'm like, oh, that is Sacha Baron Cohen. That is brilliant.
And it was a blast writing, because when you have the characters in mind, it makes it so easy just to
like
visualize
color it with it, right?
And then Talladega Nights, I think that's where they were together. So I'm not reinventing the wheel, but here's the really fun part. You know what they talk about is, oh, you were so lucky in this situation. Luck is what? Preparation and opportunity. Here I am 2 weekends ago, playing pickleball 50 yards from where I live in Palm Desert. And on the courts is people are talking about this guy, and he's a famous Hollywood movie producer. And he had just executive produced The Irishman.
Yeah,
Randall Emmett and EFO Films are interested in, and they're looking at it right now, Pickleball's the movie. And what is it? I found someone that's passionate about the sport, that is a producer, and I approached him and said, hey, what do you think? Will you take a look at it? Now, there's nothing guaranteed, nothing's done, but isn't that cool when
that is amazing.
Put it out there and you do the work?
Well, you put it out there. Well, we're going to put it out there a little bit more, but I have to tell you, and I kind of laughed when you first, mentioned pickleball. I'm like, oh, another one, pickleball. It's like everywhere I turn. So I'm a tennis player, and every tennis court that I play at now in the LA area where I play, they're marking up my tennis courts with pickleball lines. And they're holding pickleball tournaments. And pre-COVID, it was kind of like everybody was like, you got to come play pickleball. I have a girlfriend who keeps trying to get me to like the beach to play here at Venice Beach in LA. Because there's a whole pickleball court thing going on. Apparently in Venice Beach, there's a whole community. It's one of those things where when you get it, apparently, I haven't been there yet, but when you get it, you get it. And my husband played racket sports his whole life. He was a big racquetball player, and we're big tennis players in this house. So we're destined at any moment now to be on a pickleball court. But when you and I started talking and you've shared with me, and I read a bit of this in your bio, this kind of connection to the travel and tourism business, I find that really fascinating. One of our clients through my agency, the SHARPE Alliance, has been Forbes Travel Guide for the last year. So we're dealing with the whole luxury resort hotel properties all over the world right now, and clearly not a good time in the industry. So I think it's fascinating as you look at business opportunities for travel and tourism and hospitality industries, that you sort of have a very specific understanding of the business opportunity around this wonderful, crazy, silly thing called pickleball, which, just the name alone, what makes you want to smile, right? But the fact that it is a fun sport that is just kind of taking over and is really becoming almost like a cult following, I think, in a way. So it's just really interesting time to be sort of touching all of these different things in your life that are all kind of coming together. I mean, your background, what it is, it's just fascinating.
Having a blast with it. I played for a few hours this morning. And the social environment, you don't go and book a court and you play with your one friend and you play your 3 sets or whatever it is. There you show up and you sign up and you say, who wants to play? And you challenge people. And the culture of it is very social. Everyone plays doubles. The games are to 11. They take 10 to 15 minutes. So you can play, 8 games in 2 hours, or 10 or 12 games in 2 hours, and meet new friends. And, I have a tradition that I do before every game. You touch the end of the paddles and say, let's have some fun. And so that's what we're out there to do, is have fun, make friends, and be healthy at the same time. And it's a safe sport as well. You're outdoors. And so right. it's a lot of fun. In regards to anything for your clients in the industry, my paper is online, and it's at my website. Can I give a little plug?
No, please go ahead. We'll put it in your
danbeeman.com. So
which we have in the chat as well, but say it again.
Yes, danbeeman.com. And so that paper is on the site, as well as the script. It's copyrighted, of course, and registered with the Writers Guild of America. And then there's more information about the book. And then, of course, the partnership that we did with the book, I'm so excited about as well.
And which the partnership with the book, is that something that you
Well,
mentioned before?
This is connecting you and I again, sponsorship.
Yeah.
So I love partnerships. What did partnerships do? They bring people together authentically.
And elevate the way they connect with the audiences that they're trying to reach mutually.
In a more powerful
Yeah.
mechanism than advertising and pushing a message. It's an interaction. So what I wanted to do with the book is, again, I wrote it for my kids. I don't have any aspirations for how many copies it sells, but after I meet my expenses, 50% of every book purchased will go toward coral.org. It's the Coral Restoration Foundation. And what they're doing is working on reinventing coral reefs, revitalizing them, and using their engineering to create new coral reefs for the future, to sustain our oceans, to sustain our planet, so that we can have this lovely place to live.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, the work that you're doing there. I mean, gosh, even when you look at the cover of your book, it's the first thing that comes to mind that we want to preserve, and the photo that we use to promote our session today, that, you know, we can't not spend our time supporting all of this that is going to sustain our earth and for our kids and for ourselves and the generations to come. So it's incredible work. So what are you doing? You're doing a percentage of your sales. How are you helping to support coral.org?
Yeah,
and I just put that in the chat as well, if anybody wants to pick it up.
50% of the proceeds subsequent to meeting the expenses will go directly to them. So
That's
50%.
amazing.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be some 10, 20, 30%. I wanted it to be very significant. My objective with the book, I really want people to read it because I think it's really going to be helpful for personal exploration and just to touch on a lot of these issues that are really fundamental to our lives. But then let's give it some meaning, have some impact to extend it. So, you know, buy the book and save the planet kind of thing.
I love it. That's amazing. We all need to do that. I mean, look, I think we're living in a generation and a time of purpose and passion, and really in all good consciousness. We can't be involved in commercial activities and ventures and not give back and not mentor and not pay it forward. I mean, these are the things that we have to do to make this world a better place, to create the integrity and humanity that we're all trying to achieve. So finding something like that you're doing is really amazing. In your book, I know that you have a lot of essays and you've got a lot of stories and you've got some people that have contributed. Do you have any kind of favorites that you could share, one or two, to intrigue or point us to something that just really stood out for you? I mean, I'm not asking you to pick your favorite child, but I know it can feel that way. I know I've got 30 stories in mine and it's hard to pick one, but is there one that just like pops in your mind that you could share with us a little bit, like what it's about and why it touched you?
Yeah, it was a joy to write, and it was a process that my editor, Angela Borda, was so helpful for me. And when I said to her, I have these 30 essays I want to put into a book, she said, yeah, but what's the shape of the book? You know, you have to kind of create sections to it. And how do you think you can line up some sections? So the first section is about the self. So it's really doing a lot of self-exploration. And I talked about, I do an essay on the gap between stimulus and response. How do you navigate that gap? You know, and then I talk about ego and the challenges individually that we have. Then I talked about, then there's a bunch of essays about humanity, and my cousin wrote about life and death that are really touching and very personal essays. And then we get into religion. I happen to come from a very spiritual family and often share some very deep discussions with my father, and the chance to bring him into the book. And he contributed 2 different essays, one on parenting and one on spirituality and what his spiritual life has meant to him and the process of learning and growing throughout his life. And he actually, when he retired at the age of about 72, became a life coach. So
Wow.
talk about reinventing. And now
Wow.
at 86,
Oh,
he's still my
I
coach every
want
single
Dad to
day.
come on the show. I mean, you're on now, but it sounds like we're going to have to do another session. That's fascinating.
My father and I talk often, and one of the things that he says to me is not how's life treating you, but how are you treating your life? And
Oh,
it's so prescient and such a beautiful thing that has inspired me to say, how am I treating my life every single day? Am I living to my potential? Am I being the best person that I can be? So spirituality is a very important part of the book. And then earth, or human consumption on earth, and how do we treat this planet as well? Because I think, you know, as humans, we write books about each other and about ourselves and about our relationships from our perspective. But who doesn't have a voice? The earth. The earth does not have a voice. So when I talk
we
about the
have
earth
to.
and sustainability, we need
We
to
have to be their
present.
stewards and
Yes,
their
yes.
ambassadors. Oh my gosh, I love, I'm getting like goosebumps right now. And I just love what you just said in so many ways. I want to take this sound bite and capture it and play it over and over and over, because that is so important for us to understand. It is up to us to do that. And I just love how you put that in context. And kudos to Mom and Dad for bringing you up in a way to have that understanding and that perspective. It's really important. I think now more than ever, with all the craziness that's going on in our world on every level, you know, we have to hold on to these values and understand at the core as human beings how blessed we are, how lucky we are that, you know, we're renting space here, if you will. And we've got to just take better care of Earth, and we've got to take better care of each other. And, you know, I just love your approach and your philosophy.
For our kids and their kids.
Yeah. I mean, I have kids that are 21 and 24, and I shudder to think what this place is going to be like in 30 years from now when they grow up and, you know, they're out there trying to do what we're trying to do now, and how much harder it'll be if we don't try to reverse some of that action. It's really important. You know, I was asked recently, we're putting a really, really beautiful program together with a partner around all of the reinvention content. And I have always, like 30% of my company has always been dedicated in some way or shape or form to charitable work, either as clients, as doing major events, or tying in charities to things that we do. And so I've been giving a lot of thought lately to a charity that I want to designate and connect to to this campaign that we're doing. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about that offline and see if maybe there's more that we can do with coral.org. And maybe we can kind of tie them in that message and try to evangelize more of that work that they're doing as well. So we'll have to
Great.
talk about that. Yeah, no, I'm just, you know, I'm really moved by this, and I really love this. You touched on something I was going to ask you about, which were sort of the core pillars of your book, which kind of touch on, if I have this correct, issues about the self, humanity and mankind. You know where I'm going? If maybe you can sort of just list those core pillars, because I feel like they're really important. They're important to the work that you've created, and it feels like it's very much the way your personal philosophy in life. So can you just talk about those a little bit more?
Yeah, you know, the sections of the book, as I talked about, is the self, humanity, spirituality, and earth, or consumption of limited resources. But there are some other core pillars, and there are three core pillars in my mind of existentialism, and that is free will, accountability, and passion. And existentialists, they're not of a certain religion or political ideology. It's just a way of saying, who are we and what are we doing with our existence? They don't talk about, I think, therefore I am. It's the actions that dictate who you are. So we have the free will that we're given to make our decisions. So what are we doing with that free will to make those decisions? That's what makes us human. And then what are the passions that inspire us? Not the passions that you typically think of that make you a non-logical thinker, but the passions that inspire you to be a better human being, to interact and give meaning to your life. And then in the end, accountability. So I don't think any of us are bigger than being accountable to each other, to our planet, to society. So what they talk about, what the existentialists talk about, is be accountable. And
Yeah.
we have the free will to do what we want, but we also have accountability that goes along with that free will.
Yeah, no, very, really important points, and beautifully communicated. Thank you. Dan, we're kind of getting to like that back end of our conversation, and I'd love to just, allow for a little dialogue if we can open it up. And maybe since your dad is on here, maybe he wants to chime in, maybe Sean does. Mart, I don't know if, this is speaking to you, but if I can ask you to either raise your hand or unmute your mic if you would like to ask any questions or add to the conversation, I would just really love that. I just really would appreciate everybody's input.
Yeah, I do have a question. So I'm always curious. You said that you were essentially a lifelong learner. So I'm always curious as to what people read. And it doesn't have to be fiction or nonfiction or any particular thing, but what do you like to read? Who are some of your favorite authors?
Sure. And I talk about them as inspiration for my book. About 25, maybe 30 years ago, my father gave me Deepak Chopra's book, 7 Laws of Spiritual Success. And it's dog-eared and underlined and highlighted and referenced in my book quite often as well. And Stephen Covey. One of the things I reference in my book also is about sharpening your saw. And I think that's one of the most important things. I love seek first to be understood. Seek first to understand, then be understood. That's important for me. But I think sharpening the saw. So always try to, what can I learn today? How can I make today a special day? Leonard Armato talked in his discussion with Kathi about, how to make every experience with every individual he has, be present in that and allow them to be better people. How does he bring something to them? So, I like to read the inspirational books and things that challenge me to dig and dive a little deeper.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Well, Mart, you're a big reader and a passionate and you I think books are a big part of your world, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. Mr. Beeman, Mr. Dick Beeman, anything that you'd like to contribute to this conversation, given that you are such a source of inspiration in Dan's life? Oh, I need you to unmute your mic. I don't know.
Probably doesn't know it.
Yeah, I'm like, how do I ask to unmute? I don't know if I can do that.
I've got it now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right.
Hi.
This has been a very dynamic interview between you two. I sense of synchronicity evolving here as you match up so many common concepts, and you've drawn him out in a way that is really has been engaging. And Sue and I have sat here smiling and nodding and saying, we hope that cousin Sean has a piece of the action when that film comes to pass.
I love it.
I happen to be
now been
Sean's
memorialized. It's recorded. We've got all this on tape now. So
Kathi, it's nice to know you and to hear you interlocuting with so much energy. Thank you for that, and good fortune to both of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful when we get to have conversations like this and invite people into it, and knowing that this is going to be shared in so many different ways. The things that we're all doing, the work that everybody's up to, it's just really special. I think that a lot of people are looking for different ways to pivot in their life. We've, as I said earlier, COVID has been a really interesting time that has created an environment for us to rethink what we're doing, it's given us a moment to pause. You know, you think of all that commuter time and all the plans that we've had and the going out every night and running around and making a to-do list for a Saturday of the 12 errands that you're going to run. And all of a sudden you can't do all these things. And so it's given us the ability to be more introspective, to be able to spend more time connecting with ourselves. And something that I talk a lot about in my book and in these conversations is to listen to ourselves. One of my chapters is called Hello, Are You Still in There? And when we get to stop long enough to smell the roses, smell the coffee, just get introspective, just listen. Even when I take walks, you know, I usually listen to podcasts or music, or it's a chance to call a friend that I haven't talked to. Sometimes we just have to say, no, I'm going to take a half an hour to just be. And that's a really hard thing for us to do. We're constantly bombarded with so many outside sources of interaction and activity. And it's a big task to figure out how to create space for ourselves, to just be and to just listen and to be connected to ourselves. And as Sandy Abrams said, who was on my show recently and who also wrote a book called Breathe to Succeed, we need to breathe, just take a breath and just kind of be. And so I hope that in these conversations that we're having, that we're creating the space for that. We're reminding so many people of what they already know, but also giving you permission to be entitled to take that time for yourself and to figure it out. And if you're not where you want to be, to figure out how to get there. It might be a 5-minute reinvention. It might be a 10-year reinvention. But if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you're going to wake up one day and go, oh my goodness, it's been 10 years, but I have a book in my hand. But if I didn't keep at it, it wouldn't have happened. So whatever those dreams are, whatever those goals are, whatever we want to create in our lives, whoever we want to create in our lives with us, you know, we just have to figure out what that is and put one foot in front of the other and go for it. So I'm really excited to have everybody here today. Dan, so grateful.
Hey, Kathy, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Sean
Yes,
Cleary.
yes, Sean,
If I
I
could
hear
just
you.
intervene
Please.
for just a moment.
Please.
For openers, honored to be a part of this today, echoing what Uncle Dick just shared with you, you and Dan. That was terrific, and I'm very, very proud of one of my absolute favorite people in the world, Dan Beeman, my first cousin. Yeah. And what an awesome job that his parents have done of raising him. As you can see, Dick and Suzanne, they've just celebrated 60 years of marriage.
65.
They're unbelievable, the two of them.
That's amazing.
And I'll tell you, a lot of this was frankly spawned, frankly, a couple summers ago when we got together in South Bend, Indiana. And I happened to sit by my cousin, Dan Beeman, at a dinner, recognizing his parents, in fact. And
you picked up
Dan
the
was
tab for that.
talking to me about pickleball. And the next thing you know, we started this long distance communication. And it's frankly been one of the greatest adventures of my life, being a part of this. And just for one moment, if I could just comment about Deep Dive, I wrote a couple sections, as Dan alluded to, on life and death. And by the way, that the two are very closely intertwined, as I came to find out.
Yeah.
But when I submitted what I wrote to Dan called me out. And he essentially just said, you know, Sean, he goes, I like it. He goes, but you know, it's called Deep Dive. I want you to
go deeper.
I want you to go deeper.
Yeah.
And I did. And I wrote some things that I hadn't thought about in close to 40 years. And it was very emotional. It was very cathartic. And I'm just very appreciative to be a part of this today.
That's really cool. Well,
With all
Dan, I think you and I need to swap books. Okay, we're going to have to send each other copies of our books so that we can enjoy each other's books and what we've done and the work that we've done. And I want to thank everyone that's here today, that's tuning in the future. It's always wonderful to have these conversations and to create the inspiration and the motivation for people to just, be curious. Marit, I loved your question about what do you read, because I feel like that really speaks to a lot of our curiosity and the adventures that we get to go on and always have. And I've always been a voracious reader since I was a little girl. I think growing up in Australia, we only had like 3 television channels. So, reading was a big deal. And, that's where we get to escape, but it's also where we get to share. It's where we get to really express. And so whether we're writing books or reading books, I think it's just, this is the catalyst for conversations like this. So I'm really grateful. I'm going to take us out with one quote from this chapter. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Hold on. Did I lose it? No, I got it. So just a little quote from this chapter. After all, the only certainty in life is change. Our interests change, our friends change, we meet new people who inspire us with what they have experienced and seen in the world. We want new things out of life. We grow out of oneself and reinvent another. So on that note, keep reinventing, keep being curious, enjoy life, dare greatly, and have a beautiful rest of the week. And thank you for all being here today. It was such a joy. I really loved this conversation.